Hi, everyone. It's John Sharp from Heidelberg University, back today with Dr. Chris again, talking a little bit about how we can stay healthy. Today is going to be focused on how we can survive, how we can stay healthy, moving forward, summertime, fall time, winter time, especially when we're getting a lot of reports, different reports of here's what's going to happen with COVID, here's what's going to happen with the virus. A lot of different information coming out. So, and a lot of that can be overwhelming. A lot of that can be stressful. So today's talk is going to be focused on how do we deal with that and how to remain healthy. So Dr. Chris, from a physical standpoint, from your standpoint, talk to us about stress and what your view of that is and what we can do to help ourselves.
Right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when you're looking at health, there's not like one thing that makes you healthy, one thing that doesn't, right? I talked a lot the last time about eating well, moving well, thinking well, right? That's kind of that whole mindset, that whole theory was developed by Dr. James Chestnut and the wellness practice in Victoria, Canada. And over the years, I've studied his work a lot. He does a ton of research. I've been a part of some of his research with my patients and things like that. And I just love his view of health. Right? He looks at it from all angles. He looks at it from allostatic load, or what we're doing to our body that it has to fight through, okay? Versus, and you have, inside of allostatic load, you either have sufficiency of things or you have deficiency of things that make you healthy, right? So he talks a lot about that. And he does a great example of, he shows a guy with a backpack on, floating in water. And as he adds to his allostatic load, it's like he's adding a rock to his backpack, right? So he talks about rocks in your backpack all the time. So a rock in your backpack could be a poor diet or deficiency of an essential nutrient, something that your body needs to perform. And I'll talk about vitamin D here in a little bit, because that is an essential nutrient that it's pretty clear across the world that we are deficient in as a species, really. We haven't always been deficient in it. It's just that we don't get as much sunlight. We don't eat a lot of the same foods, stuff that we'll get into. But it creates stress. And when you talk about stress, right, there's, again, there's deficiencies and sufficiencies. And if we have too much stress or not enough positivity, right, a deficiency in positivity, that's stress. And stress comes in all forms. There's emotional stress that we normally think of, right? Being scared about the future, like you were talking about, is there going to be a second wave? Is there going to be, what do we do to stay healthy? That kind of stuff. There's physical stress that a lot of us has experienced because of a deficiency in movement here recently, right? We've been sitting around cooped up, gyms are closed, things like that, parks are closed, so it makes it very difficult. So that creates another deficiency. That's a type of stress. That's a physical stressor on our body that our body handles the same way as emotional stressors, especially if you start to look at a cellular level, which is what I try to do as a doctor and one who studies biology of our species. I try to look at that. There's also chemical stresses. We drink alcohol, right? So that's not great for our body. That creates a stress, or we don't put enough of the right stuff into our body. We'll talk about the vitamin D, but there's omega-3 fish oil, fatty acids, there's vitamin A, there's, probiotics, or just not eating a good balanced diet in general can lead to a whole bunch of other things that we're deficient in, which causes stress on our body. I think from the mental standpoint, you know more about that than I do. That's kind of your realm is dealing with the mental stressors and how to get through that. So I would defer to you on those types of things. But I guess just overall, when we're looking at stress, that's the biggest thing, is what types of stress do they act the same on our body? How are they affecting our cells? And what's that doing for our health? And when we look at the mental stress that's coming up, the truth is we still don't know enough. Is there going to be this second wave? You have people guaranteeing it, and you have people who are like, we don't know. People are saying, there's no way. There wasn't even a first wave, right? It's all over the place. So it's just learning how to manage that and protect yourself and do the best that you can and move forward.
So I like that. I like that analogy of the backpack, the rocks in the backpack. So, I'm thinking everybody's got rocks in their backpack, right? I don't know if there's anybody that has zero rocks. Once you put rocks in your backpack, are there ways to take them out? I mean, is that that a permanent thing, or can we lighten that load that we've put in there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can lighten the load, right? Like, um, you can start exercising. That takes some rocks out of the backpack because that removes one of those stressors that we were just talking about. You can incorporate more positive thought, things like that, the way that we're thinking, the way we're managing stress and dealing with the inevitable stressors that come up. Because you're right, everyone's going to have some rocks. They pop up, right? I ate pizza last weekend. That's a rock that's going to be there for a little bit until I can process it. And then I also do things though, like I take vitamin D, omega-3s, probiotics, vitamin A to supplement my diet and remove some of the rocks from my backpack that are existing. So yeah, there's definitely ways. Health's not an all or nothing thing. And that's why I think I like Dr. Chestnut's analogy so much is there's gonna be things that are rocks in the backpack. We've got to learn to remove the rocks as much as possible and put the right stuff in so that we can stay afloat.
Right. I mean, and you just talked about the range of prediction of what's going to happen from a range of different doctors, right? And I don't care where you go, what TV channel you turn it to, what website you go to, what news outlet you go to, you turn it there, you get there, and it's COVID-19 something, right? I mean, it's kind of we're all inundated with that information, which can be overwhelming. You can't get away from it. And in my mind, that's almost like a rock in our backpack. No matter what you do, it's COVID, right? We're living this COVID lifestyle, so to speak. So I think one thing that could be helpful also is to limit your exposure to media, to limit that consumption of COVID information. The more and more you read about it, the more and more that's on your mind. That's where you're at. That's where your mind is at, and can never stop that. And then to think and project to June, July, then project to November, December. Holy crap, this is going to be a long time. That can be very overwhelming. So I think it's also probably a good thing to, limit that maybe a couple times a day, maybe once or twice, every couple days, but all day, every day. And I think that's definitely Dr. Chestnut's word, rocking the backpack, right?
For sure. Yeah, I think so. And I think, another way to limit it besides you want information to make an informed decision, right? For yourself, for your family, things like that. So you've got to acquire that information and dig through it and use some common sense to look at it. But for me, it comes down to preparation. How am I preparing myself for worst case scenario, best case scenario? And where do I really think it's going to fall? But I want to be prepared, right? It's back to like when we were athletes a long time ago, right? It's
Years ago.
If you went into a football game, for instance, prepared for it, you had less nerves and less stress, and you were ready to go for it, right? That's why you were in the weight room. That's why you were building strength, endurance, speed, stamina, all those things. You were doing what you could to prepare yourself for a known stressful situation that was coming up. So you were removing the rocks out of your backpack long before you knew it. So that's the biggest thing, I think. And when I look at that, that's where I start to look at, how am I eating? How am I moving? And how am I thinking? And what is that doing for my health overall? So
yeah, there's a Dr. Martin Seligman. He's a positive psychology guru. So he's come up with this approach, just like you said. Think about worst case scenario. Think about best case scenario. And a lot of times, we go to those worst cases because it's kind of easier to do almost in our mind. And then you catastrophize, and that's all you think about. That's what's going to happen, right? You think about that. And so a lot of times you become overwhelmed and stressed because what do I do about it? There's nothing I can do about it. So one of his approaches is think about those two extremes and two ends of the spectrum. And then on the worst case, okay, that's the worst case. Yep. What's one thing you could do to prevent that from happening? You don't have to stop it totally, but what's one thing you can do to prevent it? And then on the other end, the best case, okay, what's one thing I can do to make sure that happens? What's one step I could take to get closer to that? And in reality, he talks about, and we've all experienced this, you can think of best case and worst case, but in reality, it usually always falls within the middle somewhere. There's really not always, you can't say always, but most of the time it's going to fall in the middle of that. So, but that helps you get a plan, that helps you get an idea of what can I do, and then in your idea that eat well, think well, move well. Okay, what's one thing I can do? Well, I could start walking to the mailbox like you had referenced last time. That's one thing. Okay, cool. That's going to get me started. So again, on that that mental side of things, that helps you always being prepared. I did one thing. Hey, that's more than zero. So,
Yeah.
so thinking about the stress that could be coming, or the stress that could be caused by the unknown, all the question marks. What is your approach to help prevent that, or to help manage that when it does come?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I talk with my patients a lot about, right? I talked about last time with you the walking 2 miles and what that does for your body according to the nurses study and thing, and that's creating sufficiency in movement, right? And that's all that is. It's removing stressors, removing rocks, if you will. So one thing I was talking with a patient about this morning, I can just kind of pass on. It's more on the eat well side of things, and I was talking about vitamin D intake. Like I mentioned earlier, it is a real pandemic as well, because worldwide we are deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D is hugely important for our nervous system. We used to think it was just a vitamin, right, that we had in our bodies and everything else. But what we've come to find out is it's more of a hormone, actually a steroid of sorts. So our body uses it in a lot more functions than we thought, right? So we thought it was just kind of bone density, kind of calcium, mineral usage. It aided in that. We had more dense bones if we took vitamin D. But they've been studying it a lot more in a ton of different facets, right? And I was just reading some research this morning on vitamin D intake and autoimmunity, right? Which is pretty similar, and I'll explain that here in a second, to what we're facing right now with COVID. Because autoimmunity is our body's inability to downregulate our immune system, right? We need to be able to kick our immune system into gear when necessary, but we also don't want it to go too far and get into a super hyper inflamed state like we're seeing with a lot of the chronic upper respiratory tract stuff that's going on with COVID. It's a hugely inflammatory response. A lot of doctors are even comparing it more to like an altitude sickness than a virus, the typical virus, right? And how we're responding to it. So in the study that I was reading, it said, every study is going to say we need to do more research on this. We need to do more research. But the conclusion of this study was vitamin D is hugely important in down-regulating the immune system. When we get to that point, pulling things back down so that we don't get to that hyperinflamed state, right? So we need to make sure to remove a rock that we're sufficient in vitamin D. And most of us aren't. And looking at all the studies, we need to be taking around 5,000 IUs, or international units, of vitamin D every day from a certified organic solid source, right? It can't be synthetic. Vitamin D has also been shown to do the opposite. So we don't want to take synthetic forms of these vitamins. We've got to take a naturally occurring form, and like an olive oil medium, something that it survives in and we can transport and it doesn't have more reaction to it, right? So vitamin D is hugely important to get to the appropriate levels in our blood to create sufficiency for our immune system. And that's just one of its functions. I've been focusing on that a lot lately. So,
well, I will make sure to call my parents and thank them for making me chug vitamin D milk growing up as a kid, because Dr. Chris said that's, and all the studies said that's good. Well, that's very educational. That's something I wasn't aware of, that vitamin D can do that. And it's more than just makes your bones hard, right? That's kind of
right.
what my thought was. So, but being able to do that can help physically help you deal with that stress. And as I'm sitting here, listening to you talk and thinking about the eat well, move well, think well, in my mind, I'm thinking like, this is all stuff we're in control of, right? I mean, this isn't we slip and fall and it happens to us. This is stuff that we can actively choose to do. Even when we can't go anywhere, we can still choose what we eat. I mean, fast food's open. You can choose to go there, right?
Right.
Or you can go choose to buy something healthy at the grocery store. And I think that's a big thing to think about too, because stress can be caused by we don't have any control. Stress can be caused by what do? I don't know. I don't have any choice to make, right? I don't have the choice to go and do whatever I want because we have certain regulations. So I think that's something that can help as well, is to make sure we are focusing on what we can control. A lot of times our frustration, our anxiety, depression, feelings of being overwhelmed are caused by focusing on things we can't control. Focusing on, well, this needs to open up now. They need to change things now. Well, as a private citizen, I don't know if I have much say in what happens going forward. but I have a say in what I do at home, right? I have a say in if, okay, let me go and make sure I'm outside, being outside, that getting sunlight gets you some vitamin D, right? So making that choice, again, focusing on those are things I have control over. And it can be as little as what I wear today, right? What I eat for breakfast today, when I wake up, all those things are within our control. And sometimes when we focus on those things and going along with what you're saying, especially the vitamin D, like you just talked about, focusing on what we can control, stress doesn't go away, right? I mean, stress never goes away, but the intensity of that stress tends to decrease. And when those things decrease, you tend to feel more in control, and then it's kind of a snowball effect in the positive way.
Right.
But that makes sense. So vitamin D, I had mentioned milk, kind of my joke, but milk, sunshine. How else do we get vitamin D?
Well, I think if you look at certain things, if you look at milk also has a rock in the backpack kind of effect. Dairy does in general, which, we can get into later, but that can be a tough one. But vitamin D, honestly, sunlight is going to be your best source from it, right? The problem is, even me being in Texas, I'm not close enough to the equator to get enough. I wear clothes all day, right? So I know my body doesn't get enough on the skin. And anytime it has to go through glass, like if you catch it through a window or something like that, it loses the ability to convert to vitamin D in your body because of how the UV rays react and everything. So it's one of those things that we have to supplement in our diet. I call them, and Dr. Chestnut introduced me to essential nutrients, right? Essential means we need them, but our body doesn't create enough of them, right? We have to add it to our diet in order to take it and in order to get enough because of the things that I just mentioned. We don't get enough of them. So that's part of the positive choices that we can make. And it becomes tough because, like I mentioned, synthetic vitamin D isn't going to help. It can actually make things worse. It can add a rock versus a good vitamin D taking them out.
What's an example of a synthetic vitamin D?
There's more synthetic than not, right? So the one that I see most commonly come into my office is Nature Made is the brand of it, right? Not to throw one under a bus, but I just noticed it was a synthetic one. There's tons of them out there because supplements aren't regulated. You have to really understand supplements. So you need to talk to someone you trust about, what are good supplements, someone who studies it regularly. And you can also check out innatechoice.com. That's one of Dr. Chestnut's websites because he makes an omega-3 that actually has vitamin A and vitamin D in it, probiotic, and a multivitamin, and then a separate just vitamin D as well because they are essential nutrients and we can't get enough of them. So it's been kind of his mission to create the best supplements that I've ever seen and that I believe to be on the planet. So he does a really great job with that. But as far as, you just got to try to find the best ones you can and hope that they're not synthetic. You got to research them because they're not going to put that on the label because the FDA supplements aren't regulated. So that's an expensive process and supplements don't go through that.
So again, if that's something that you want to do, make sure you're doing your due diligence and what's correct, what is healthy for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So vitamin D, you're from Ohio. I'm in Ohio right now. We're starting to get sunny days. So you're in Texas. You're a few latitudinal lines below us. So we're hoping to get some more sunshine here, and that would be nice. I think even just for mood, right? Just sunshine seems to increase everybody's mood. So that's good for vitamin D. What else? So from your point of view, vitamin D and some of those essential supplements, I think is what you call them, are really important for you. As far as wanting people to stay healthy, to remove those rocks, especially in stressful times moving ahead. What else do you feel like is important, if people are experiencing this stress or struggling with it in the future?
Yeah, I think, there's a ton of stuff, right? We could go on for days about this. It's a big topic. But when you look at the essential nutrients, I think an important thing to understand is the essential nutrients aren't so much like a medicine, right? Medicines are used to treat certain symptoms. But what the essential nutrients are for are to get to a state of sufficiency so that your body can function correctly, right? Omega-3s are good for the heart. Everyone knows they're good for the heart, right? And that's because that's where they spent time studying it in the beginning. There are millions of functions that require, every single cell in your body requires omega-3s, right? I mean, if you look at just, if we'll focus on the immune system, for instance, there's one of the process when a bacteria or a virus comes in is called phagocytosis. So basically you have cells that just go out and eat these things, right? Well, if you're not sufficient in omega-3s, and you have a ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s, which should be 1-to-1, but typically in the United States, it's 1 omega-3 to 20 omega-6s. So it's way off, right? We're severely deficient in omega-3s as well. If that's the situation for your immune system, when these cells go out, their cell walls, which are made up of these fats, are not as fluid, so they can't engulf things as easily. They're very rigid. So it's got to be just the right situation for them to work out. So it's not about actually attacking those cells. It's being sufficient so that your body can do what your body's supposed to do. All right. So that's how all these essential nutrients should be looked at, is just creating sufficient. You either have sufficiency or deficiency. You want to have sufficiency so your body can do what it needs to do, because our body is set up to deal with this exact virus that we see, with any virus that comes in, a novel virus, a coronavirus, a rhinovirus, it doesn't matter. Our body's set up to deal with it. Our body can't always deal with it if we're living in deficiency versus being in sufficiency. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I mean, that makes sense. The more rocks you have in your backpack, the more difficult it is going to be to, meet a challenge or meet a goal or climb a mountain or whatever might be in your path.
Exactly.
So, part of, I think, dealing with stress and moving forward and the unknowns, can also be, seeing this period of time as this unique opportunity. It is a unique opportunity to do things you've never done before, to do things better than you've never done before. Because in a lot of people's situation, you are not in your daily work routine, your daily academic routine, your daily family routine. So I think, for what I'm hearing now, again, is what a great opportunity now to take some of this information, because this is all new to me and very educational, which is awesome. And take this, like, wait a minute, I have the opportunity now to focus on, maybe just one of the three, wells that you talk about: eat well, think well, move well. Maybe I want to focus on, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to eat well, and I'm going to incorporate some of these essential supplements, nutrients that you talked about. So I think that's a good thing. And just one example, I mean, just because, we're talking, that's what's my focus right now, but it can be the opportunity for anything. Maybe that's the opportunity I want to learn about this stuff, not even do it, but I want to learn about, what Dr. Chris is talking about. So I mean, it's a great time to see this, as an opportunity. You don't have to, but that could make things more stressful. There's nothing I can do again, and I can't do anything. I'm stagnant. That can be more stressful without a purpose. People can be more stressed and experience more emotional distress as well. So, but seeing this situation as an opportunity, and in my mind now, I'm sitting here going, I might have to talk to my wife, who does the grocery shopping, about getting some of these, omega-3s and incorporating that back into that. But again, because why not? Again, it's an opportunity to do something different. And that maybe even fits into that, think well, not necessarily positive thoughts, but alternate perceptions of what's going on.
Well, I think it is a positive thought too. If you feel like you're doing something positive for your body, it's a positive thought, right? You said a couple of things there. You mentioned opportunity. I think this has been a great opportunity for a lot of people. I know myself, we were kind of on the front edge of like Facebook and social media while we were in college, right? And I never had it until I had to have it, until I opened an office. And I never really used it like I could to build a following, create, more for our offices, marketing, all that stuff that goes into it. The same stuff you're doing right now, right? And it's made me do it. I had no choice if it was a survival thing, right? So that's a huge positive for me. I learned new skills and things. I took a course through Yale, which you had suggested earlier, right? So that was an opportunity for me to do something. And that goes back to what you were saying about choices, things we do have control over. We can jump on, you can jump on to Facebook and follow someone who's not talking about COVID, or get onto different social media platforms and look at the positive side of things, make that choice to do that kind of stuff. And it just all leads to a healthier situation for yourself, and then, like you said, adding that stuff to your grocery list. that's a big thing is making sure that you start to take those steps to do the right thing for yourself. And I encourage anyone who has questions to reach out. You can email, you can call me, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Follow that stuff on social media. We're TexasChiroHealth.com on Facebook and Instagram, and we're always putting up that kind of information so that people know where to go. I mentioned Dr. Chestnut's websites earlier. Another good, Eat Well, Move Well, Think Well.com. That's one of his websites, and he has a ton of information and research on all the different stuff: the vitamin D, the vitamin A, the omegas, the probiotics, movement, and what the actual peer-reviewed research says. It's all in one place for you to go to. So that's an incredible source as well, and you can make those choices to learn positive things during this versus just taking the negative all the time. So
right. So thinking about taking that course, doing more marketing, jumping on social media, and maybe making any lifestyle changes. You've done some of those things. You're doing some of those things. We are doing some of those things. I mean, this was a great opportunity for us to stay connected even more than we are. When you're doing those things, and I can answer as well, but maybe I'll answer first. My question is, how do you feel once you're done with those? And I know things that I've done, like I've done a little bit more reading for enjoyment and professionally, some of that research to get my mind, improved just career wise. But I know when I do those things, even one step, or even especially when I complete something, and I feel great. I mean, I feel happy. I feel accomplished. I feel proud. I feel, even energized to keep doing more, so that's been my experience. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I've made a choice to do something positive for myself. It's a positive thought. It creates sufficiency in my mindset and what I need, right, for my body. But almost finishing that course, you're probably a little further ahead of it than I am. But it's like, I tell people I took a course at Yale. That's pretty cool. Right. So, it's fun to do that kind of stuff. And the research stuff, I like digging into the research. I mean, I've always had a kind of biology, physiology type mindset. So reading that stuff is enjoyable to me. And I realize it's not enjoyable to everybody, but that's why we talk to other people about it. Right. So.
Yeah, I thought that was important to point out, because when we do make these choices and then you do follow through and then you do reach that goal, or even if you do somewhat, you don't reach the full goal, you do some of them, you're still going to feel good. And again, it's kind of like that snowball effect where it's helping you move that momentum towards that positivity, whatever that might be. So I think that's important for people to think about too. All right, Dr. Chris, anything else you feel like you want to share today?
No, actually, just if you need anything, reach out. Let me know. Anybody can. So.
What's your contact information again, just so we know?
Yeah, my easiest email is drp, Dr. P, at txchealth.com. So that stands for Texas Chiro Health. And then TexasChiroHealth.com is our Facebook. It's our Instagram. Our website's kind of under construction right now. We just have a landing page, but that should be done fairly soon. I've created all the content, so there's a ton of content going up on there. And just anything you guys need to answer questions. And EatWellMoveWellThinkWell.com is a great resource that I use all the time with Dr. Chestnut stuff. So
awesome. Don't be afraid to check out Dr. Chris. Be in contact with him. All right, man. As always, appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Go Berg.
Yep, go Berg. Thanks, Russ.